guys, welcome to week 11. Hopefully things are going well. Remember, this week you're not going to have a writing assignment, so take the extra time to review the past materials because we're only a couple weeks out until the exam. So this week's topic was intercultural communication within a business environment. Hopefully this was interesting for some of you that are thinking about pursuing business, or for any of you that are interacting with business. So like we talked about in the first chapter, there is a huge growth globally in business relationships between people of different cultures. And because of that, there are a lot of effects of this. So some of the ones that we discussed in this chapter are first domestic growth, that the American workforce is changing and that the market for products is much more diverse now. And so, for example, if you were selling soap 30 or 40 years ago, the way that you marketed is quite different from today when the marketing is much more multicultural. Also, there was a discussion about how women have a lot of buying power, and so a lot of ads are targeted at women. Globally, there's a lot of standardized advertising. Pepsi, Coke, these kind of products are sold all over the world. And some people think that some of the standardized advertising might have a negative effect on cultural values. Another topic is intercultural interactions in business environments. And so the way that people work together that are from different cultures and why the reasons are that these are happening and the power dynamics that exist within it. And like we talked about in the first chapter, that diversity within a business environment is both a good PR initiative, but also it's important for businesses to respect their employees and that they can benefit if they understand a more diverse clientele. One of the topics that we've talked about in previous chapters is individualism versus collectivism and how that affects work. And so American work cultures are very individualistic, and that workers are expected to perform clear functions and that jobs are very well defined. Whereas in more collectivistic cultures, jobs are not as well defined and might be assigned to an entire team. And then collectivistic cultures, people help each other out at work. And also the people's attitude towards why we do work. So in some cultures, work is seen as a virtue that's going to pay off, and in others, it's just a necessary burden just to make money and survive. Also, in talking about language issues, it's really interesting because in a lot of work environments now, people are operating in languages that are not their own. So an example is often domestic workers, people that are cleaning rooms, but also that you go to a hospital, for example. A lot of hospital staff, nurses, for example, are not native born Americans. And so how does that affect the way that people interact with them? So we talked before about indirect versus direct communication, and that when you're trying to obtain information, that a direct style is probably the easiest way to do it. Indirect, though, is a cultural value in some cultures, and so you have to respect that if you're working with a culture that has a different style than you do. Same with high and low context about communicating verbally versus non-verbally. One of the interesting topics within this chapter was face work, and that saving face is more of a value than being honest in some cultures, and that can have major business effects, and there were some good examples in the book of this. We also talked a little bit about negotiations and how culturally bound negotiations are really interesting and can affect the way that people operate within a business environment. Another interesting topic in this chapter was talking about diversity, prejudice, and discrimination at work, and that traditionally in American organizations there was a dominant attitude, and that's changing now as America becomes more diverse. Another subtopic in this is talking about affirmative actions, that some organizations have preferential treatment for minority groups and women in order to help them move up the ladder and defeat the old boys network. And so the different ways that people can address affirmative actions, or organizations address affirmative actions, are pretty interesting. There are often equal employment opportunity laws, and also the Americans with Disabilities Act that make companies address affirmative actions issues head on. And then informally, there can be trainings and encouragement to management to deal with different issues dealing with diversity in the workplace. So yeah, so that's about it for this chapter. A lot of it was rehash of things we've seen before, but talking about it in a business context. Hopefully this was interesting to you, and otherwise we'll see you next week. Have a good week.